And at that day, an exchange student came to our school. And when we bumped into each other, I didn't even realize that we started to speak in English. And we actually spoke for quite a while freely. We were joking and having fun. But once I got home, I got a sudden realization. How come we spoke in English? Because I don't even have English classes at school.
Huh?
Hey everybody, my name is Max and I've been learning languages for quite a while now, and I've been teaching different languages for 9 years already. And on this channel I share practical tips and tricks about learning languages. So, what I said in the beginning of the video is true. When I was around 15 or 16 years old, I realized that I can actually speak English quite freely and communicate with natives. And that fact actually startled me quite a lot. So I started to try reading different books in English, like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and I found out that it's easy peasy for me. But the funniest thing is that I didn't learn English at that time. At school I was studying German since the first grade up until 9th grade. And exactly at 16 years old I got into the 9th grade and had my first official English class at school and immediately got transferred into the advanced class. And the big question about it is, how? I think for the first time this question appeared around a year ago, when my struggles with Chinese language started to drive me crazy. And I started to ask myself, how come? How come that my English language learning was so seamless that I don't even remember how I learned that language? And why studying Chinese feels like I'm trying to break a wall with my head? So I started to decompose what I was doing at that time from a perspective of an experienced language teacher, and all of this suddenly started to make sense. Even my struggles with Chinese started to make sense. But let me explain. A chaotic method that surprisingly worked. Alright, let me quickly describe the setting for you, it is important. I grew up in Russia during 90s, and at that time the whole country was crazy about everything Western. Books, music, video games, and of course, movies. Oh, movies! My brother and I got hypnotized by those movies. Lord of the Rings, Back to the Future, Matrix, Terminator. Oh, I can name these movies like for the whole day. And we watched them on repeat for days and weeks and months. But the thing is that at that time we only had pirated VHS, so the dubbing was absolutely horrible. So very often we could hear original English track and the original English voices of those actors. And we just loved how they sounded. We couldn't understand anything, but we just enjoyed the process of watching those movies and getting kinda lost in those movies. And you see, because we watched those movies so many times, we could basically retell the whole movie word by word, including those parts in English language that we could catch by our listening. And my brother and I even played some guessing games. We tried to guess each other's quotes, like from which movie that quote was. Then our dad brought home our first computer, Pentium 3, and we've discovered games like Warcraft 2, Diablo 2, and many other breathtaking games. And of course, they barely had any translation. I think there is no need to explain how many hours we spent playing those games. And now, as a teacher, I can kind of deconstruct what was happening. Basically, we were learning the language through the comprehensive input. But let me correct myself. In the beginning, watching all those movies and playing all those games was a completely incomprehensive input. But the thing is that we've watched those stories so many times that slowly we started to understand more and more of what was going on. And just like this, an incomprehensive input slowly became the comprehensive input. And all phrases from those movies and games remained burned in our memory. And the best part about it was that we've learned all those words not in an isolation. We were learning them in a context, already as a part of a sentence or a phrase. And we were growing up without internet. Oh no, actually we had internet. We bought an infrared port for the computer and we just connected an infrared port of the computer to the infrared port of the phone, and we also had to like kind of balance the whole thing, because if the phone is gonna fall then we will just lose the connection. Alright, it doesn't matter, but then I feel old. But without the internet, two geeks could only play with each other, and we kind of role-played scenes from those movies. And now, as an experienced teacher, I can say that role-playing is a great method for building spoken fluency, rhythm of speech, and pronunciation. But you see, we were doing it even without realizing how useful it was. And if I had to summarize it, I would say that in my childhood I was learning English without study books, quite chaotically, just through comprehensive input and constant speaking practice with my brother by doing role plays and playing games. Then came YouTube, then podcasts, and then I ended up having my first English class in the 9th grade, or like immediately in an advanced group. So, sounds like this magical, comprehensive input-based method worked, right? So I can apply it to my Chinese language study, right? Well, applying the same method to Chinese was not what I expected. So after all of this, I had this feeling that I finally cracked the code. It worked once, so it should work again. Because I am already tired of learning Chinese. And it feels like the more I learn, the less I know. And all these traditional study books and traditional Chinese classes that I had just didn't give me the result that I wanted. So I started to apply the comprehensive input practice to my everyday language study routine. So I found cartoons online, podcasts, books and audiobooks, all of it in Chinese language. And I want to underline that was all that I was doing. I decided to stop doing all the traditional classes that I had and stop touching the study books because I already got sick of them. It was 2 months of fierce grinding, and I was expecting to see how my spoken Chinese is going to improve. Remember, exactly the spoken Chinese was my aim. I already had no problems with reading or understanding by listening. And the results were frustrating at that time, but it all made sense afterwards. Why frustrating? Well, because my spoken Chinese didn't improve in any way. Literally, I tried to talk with my Chinese friends again, and I felt the same frustration and the same lack of words as before, maybe even more. And that brought me to other teachers that I knew, and I decided to talk with them about their experience. And after many discussions, that brought me to the realization it was actually quite a dumb idea to try to apply the method that I used to learn English to my Chinese language learning, because this comprehensive input-based method that allowed me to gain fluency in English took 10 to 15 years of constant practice.
Nice.
While I was expecting to achieve the same results for my Chinese in scope of just 1 or maybe 2 years. I think you can understand that if you want to speed up the process, then probably you should do something different. So if you have 10 or 15 years that you can spend on it, good for you. But if you kind of want to speed up the process, I think you understand that you need to do something different. And so eventually, by trials and errors and applying some of my linguistical knowledge, I figured out some principles that allowed me to really speed up my learning process a lot and gain fluency a lot faster. So first of all, listening and speaking are two different skills that you need to practice separately, actually.
Huh?
Because comprehensive input and lots of listening, they enrich your passive vocabulary, but not active, and it helps you to develop the feeling of language, the so-called yugan in Chinese language. But it doesn't build your fluency. The conscious and consistent speaking practice builds your fluency because, and it is one more principle, actually speaking is the muscle memory. And if it sounds interesting for you, you can like this video and subscribe to the channel because I'm going to talk more about it in my next videos. And so what was my new approach? Actually, yeah, it sounds not as tempting as just watch movies till fluency. I think I can formulate my new approach as listening, extracting, and applying. And just like I said, I'm gonna talk more about it in details in my next video. And right now, I hope this one was useful for you guys. So if you agree or disagree with me, feel free to leave a comment below. And for more tips and useful info about language learning, you can click on a video somewhere here. So yeah, thank you guys, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.